My name is Eleanor Hart, and this story is the story of a life I built in silence. Not because I was ashamed of my success, not because I feared envy or judgment, but because I believe something the world often forgets. If a child grows up worshiping money, they don't grow up at all. When my son, Marcus, was born, I was 27 years old, already rising in a world that devours people alive. Corporate finance, international investments, executive negotiations, rooms full of wolves dressed in silk and steel. But the night I held him for the first time, I made a promise to myself. He will grow up knowing love before luxury, character before convenience, humanity before wealth. So I built my world around two lives, the one everyone feared me for, and the one my son loved me for. To Marcus, I was a simple mother. To the board of Hartwell Global, I was the storm they never dared to cross. This story begins the night my two worlds collided. It was a Thursday evening. The sky outside my small kitchen window was soft with lavender dusk. I was humming to myself as I washed dishes when the door opened. Marcus stepped inside. My boy, now a grown man with his father's smile, and my stubbornness stitched into his spine. "Mom," he said, sliding his phone onto the counter. "Simone's parents want to take us to dinner. This weekend." I dried my hands. "Oh, that's sudden." He laughed nervously. "They're kind of fancy." I raised an eyebrow. "Kind of." He slumped into the chair at the table. "Okay, very fancy. Like old money, formal dinner, the kind of people who get offended if their water isn't imported from a mountain glacier." "Ah," I said, smiling. "That sort." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I told Simone you'd come. She wants you there. But can you do me a favor?" I looked at him. He swallowed. "Could you not tell them too much about your job?" There it was, the same concern he'd always had. Not shame. No, Marcus never felt shame about me. But he knew the world judged people by their packaging. I placed a hand on his cheek. "Of course, sweetheart." He exhaled in relief. "What should I wear?" I asked playfully. He hesitated. "Something, I don't know, a little formal." I thought about that. "No," I said gently. "I'll wear what I usually wear." "Mom." I held up a hand. "Trust me." He did. He always did. "Before I take you to that dinner, you must understand why I chose the life I lived. I could afford penthouses, ocean view villas, private chefs, the kind of clothing that makes people bow without realizing it. But I chose a two-room cottage. I chose rice and lentils over imported wine. I chose public buses over chauffeur-driven cars. I chose worn sweaters, comfortable shoes, and a life free from the weight of performance. Because wealth is a mirror that shows a person what they truly are. Some see generosity, some see greed, some see superiority, some see emptiness. I wanted Marcus to see none of it. He grew up believing kindness was the highest currency. He grew up learning how to treat waiters, cleaners, drivers, not as people below him, but as people who carried parts of the world on their backs. Would he still be that man if he'd grown up surrounded by marble floors and crystal chandeliers? I doubt it. So I lived small to grow something big inside him. But that night, Simone's parents would mistake my simplicity for poverty, and that mistake would expose everything they were. Aurelia, a restaurant so extravagant that even its silence costs money. Golden walls, velvet carpeting, staff who looked like they had signed contracts not to breathe too loudly. Marcus helped me out of the taxi. He looked at my cardigan, my old sandals, the faint stitching on my handbag where I'd repaired it myself. "Mom," he winced. "Are you sure?" I touched his arm. "I'm perfect." He sighed but nodded. Simone was waiting inside, waving excitedly. She hugged me tightly. "You look lovely," she whispered. And I knew she meant it. Behind her stood her parents, Veronica Langford, beautiful in the way a diamond is beautiful. Sharp, cold, impossible to ignore. Franklin Langford, rigid posture, expensive suit. The kind of man who measured worth in car engine sounds. Their eyes moved over me like scanners. Veronica gave me a smile. That didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, Eleanor, what a charming outfit." "Thank you," I said simply. We sat. The waiter brought menus that felt like they were made of wood, and velvet. Simone leaned over. They import the paper from Italy, she whispered. Of course they did. Veronica folded her hands elegantly. So, Eleanor, she began. Simone tells us you live modestly. I nodded. Very. Franklin raised an eyebrow. What do you do? If you don't mind me asking. I sip my water. I clean offices. Part-time. The table froze. Simone choked on her drink. Marcus pinched the bridge of his nose. Veronica blinked like I'd told her I lived on Mars. Oh, how admirable, she said, voice dripping with pity. Franklin chuckled softly. Well, we all contribute to society in different ways. Simone whispered, Dad, please. Veronica leaned toward me. You know, Eleanor, people with limited resources often find it stressful to maintain connections with families like ours. Do they? I asked, smiling gently. She nodded with exaggerated sympathy. And we want to help you avoid that stress. I placed my fork down, waiting. Veronica continued. We were thinking of offering you a small allowance. $600 a month. Just so you can live comfortably. Franklin added. And maybe give Marcus and Simone some space, so they aren't pulled down by limitations. Marcus slammed his palm on the table. Enough. The room turned. Simone grabbed his arm, whispering, Please don't cause a scene. But I reached out and touched Marcus' hand. It's all right. It was not all right. But it was necessary. Let them finish. Let them reveal themselves fully. I lifted my napkin and placed it neatly on the table. Veronica, Franklin, may I ask you something? They both nodded cautiously. If I told you I earned $40,000 a month, would you still see me as a burden? Veronica almost laughed. Oh, Eleanor, please. Let's not pretend. I reached into my handbag and placed my black card on the table. Not just any black card. The kind reserved for high-tier executives, with verified annual incomes in the millions. Veronica's mouth opened. Franklin leaned forward so fast he hit the table. Marcus stared at me. Mom, what is that? I finally let the truth breathe. I am the Senior Executive Director of Hartwell Global. I oversee international mergers. I lead teams across 3 continents. And I make more in 1 month than most households make in a year. The restaurant quieted. Simone covered her mouth. The waiter nearly bowed. I looked directly at the Langfords. I live simply because I value humility, not because I lack wealth. Veronica whispered, trembling. Why didn't you say anything? Because, I said softly, I wanted to see who you were when you thought I had nothing. Their faces fell apart. Franklin stammered. We didn't mean. You meant every word, I said. And now you can face what they reveal. The waiter returned. Will this be on a single bill? Yes, I said. But Veronica panicked. No, we can pay. She handed her gold card with shaky fingers. A moment later, the waiter returned. I'm sorry, ma'am. Your card has been declined. Franklin handed his. Moments later, declined as well. A hush fell across the table. I slid my black card forward. Put it on mine. The waiter bowed. For the first time that night. Veronica looked truly small. This is humiliating, she whispered. No, I replied. This is honesty. The car ride after that explosive dinner felt unreal. Marcus drove in silence. His fingers gripped the steering wheel so tightly. His knuckles looked cold and white. Simone sat beside him, trembling, her eyes red from holding back tears. I sat alone in the back seat. Not sad, not angry, just steady. It is strange how truth, once spoken, does not echo with the noise you expect. Sometimes it lands in your chest like snowfall, quiet and irreversible. Halfway through the drive, Marcus finally spoke. Mom, why did you hide this from me? His voice cracked. I leaned forward because I wanted you to grow into a man who stands tall without needing a mountain of wealth beneath him. He slammed his hand on the steering wheel. But still, I'm your son. I should have known. You knew the important parts, I said softly. That I work hard. That I love you. That I'm here. Everything else, your life didn't need it. He swallowed like someone trying not to cry. What about all those times I worried about you? Mom, there were days I thought you couldn't afford repairs, groceries. And those worries, I whispered, made you kind, made you generous, made you human. Simone wiped her eyes. I'm so sorry for what my parents said, she whispered. I didn't know they would treat you like that. I touched her shoulder. Simone, you are not responsible for the shadows behind you. Only the light you choose to walk in. She started crying, softly. I hate that they embarrassed you. No, sweetheart, I said. They revealed themselves. And that is a kind of freedom. When we reached my home, Simone got out instantly and hugged me. I don't want to go home tonight, she whispered. I can't face them. Marcus stepped around the car too. You can stay with us, I said gently. But Simone shook her head. No, I want to go home. I want to talk to them. But I need time to breathe. She paused. Eleanor, thank you for not yelling at them. You showed more grace than they deserved. I kissed her forehead. Your family, Simone. No matter their behavior. Marcus hugged me next. Mom, I'm sorry if I ever made you feel like you needed to stay small. I smiled. You didn't. I chose my size. He laughed through a sniffle. God, you're impossible. Only a little. They left. And the moment the car drove away, I finally let myself sit on the porch steps. I looked at my hands. Hands that had negotiated multi-million-dollar contracts. Hands that had held my son through heartbreaks and triumphs. Hands that had chosen silence as armor. Tonight, those hands had lifted an entire mask off a family and placed it on the floor where it belonged. I breathed deeply. A storm was coming, but storms have a strange way of cleaning the air afterward. Later that night, around 11 p.m., my phone buzzed. A message from Simone. They're furious. I've never seen them like this. Then another. My mother is crying. My father is screaming about respect and status. They said you humiliated them on purpose. Then, I told them the truth. They humiliated themselves. Then, Mom, Dad, they don't understand humility. They never did. I typed a simple response. Breathe, sweetheart. Truth burns before it cleans. I put the phone down, but my heart tightened. I knew this confrontation would not end at a dinner table. Pride like theirs always searches for someone to blame, and it wouldn't take long before they pointed their fingers at me. The next morning, I entered the headquarters of Hartwell Global, like I had for years, quietly, efficiently, invisibly. People didn't whisper because I kept myself hidden. People whispered because I was the woman who could move markets with a phone call. My office was on the 34th floor, floor-to-ceiling glass, a view of the entire city shimmering below. My assistant, Jamie, rushed to me. Ms. Hart, you need to see this. She handed me a printed email from Veronica Langford to Hartwell Global Executive Board. My jaw didn't clench. I simply read every line with cold clarity. She had written that I was manipulative, that I had emotionally ambushed her family, that I lived a double life, that I was unfit to hold a senior position, that my voluntary poverty was suspicious, and that perhaps I was hiding illegal finances. So that's how they wanted to play. Jamie watched my face carefully. Do you want me to alert legal? I shook my head. No need. Are you angry? She asked nervously. I smiled. Jamie, I don't get angry. I calculate. I walked into my office, closed the door, and called the board directly. Time for the next act. An emergency board session was held within 2 hours. Some executives arrived curious, some worried, some amused, because they knew who they were dealing with. I entered the boardroom. Calm, poised, a woman without fear. The chairman spoke first. Eleanor, we received a concerning email. Yes, I cut in softly. I read it. Let me clarify. I slid a stack of documents across the long table. Annual audits, tax records, background checks, financial transparency reports. All spotless, all flawless. Then I looked directly at them. I live simply by choice, not because of misconduct, but because I value character over spectacle. They nodded slowly. One board member asked, "And this personal dispute?" I folded my hands. I pretended to be financially modest, to understand the true nature of the people who want long-term influence over my son's life. Silence. The chairman broke it. Did that strategy work? I smiled. It exposed exactly what was needed. A few executives chuckled behind their hands. The chairman leaned back. Eleanor, your position is untouchable. Your results speak louder than any complaint. I nodded. Thank you. He added, we will send a formal response to the Langfords. They will not contact us again. I thanked them and exited the room. But even as I walked down the bright corridor, I couldn't shake a feeling. This was not the end. The Langfords were powerful in their own right. Old money, social influence, board connections in other industries. People like them do not surrender gracefully. They would escalate. I knew it. I felt it. And I was ready. That evening, as I was preparing simple vegetable soup, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Marcus. His voice was shaking. Mom, you won't believe what they've done. What is it? They filed a petition in court. I froze mid-step. Court? Yes, he said, nearly whispering. They're accusing you of manipulation, saying you intentionally deceived them for financial leverage. A slow, cold calm settled inside my chest. What else? I asked. He hesitated. They're also petitioning for a restraining order to keep you from interfering in our marriage. I exhaled. Ah, there it was. The real battle. The one that reveals the truth. Not to them, but to my son and his wife. Marcus, I said softly, listen to me. Do not panic. Do not yell. Do not confront them. But Mom, let them do what they think they must. Truth shines brightest in a courtroom. He swallowed. We're with you. Me and Simone. Always. I know. I hung up. Sat down at the kitchen table. Placed both hands flat on the wood. A courtroom battle. I hadn't expected it to come to this, but perhaps it was needed. A final stage, where masks are removed. Under oath. I looked out the window. The world outside was quiet. Calm. Storms often are. Before they break. The next morning, I drove to my attorney's office. His name was Nathaniel Pierce. A brilliant mind. Sharp as winter wind. And loyal as iron. He shook my hand firmly. Eleanor, I've read the petition. This won't stand. Explain it to me, I said, sitting down. He opened the file. They're accusing you of intentional deception, for emotional manipulation. They claim you humiliated them publicly, to gain power over your son's marriage. I raised an eyebrow. Creative. And laughable, he added. But court takes everything seriously. So we will too. We spent 3 hours building the case. Timeliness financial documents, witness list, psychological framework, character, evaluation evidence from the restaurant bank declines, recorded conversation fragments, from staff corporate transparency reports mails, from the Langfords themselves. He leaned back finally. Eleanor, are you sure you want to pursue full defense? Yes. Then I need to ask something. I looked at him. If we win, do you want to countersue? I shook my head. No, I don't want revenge. I want clarity. You'll get it. I stood. Nathaniel, thank you. He smiled. For you, Eleanor, winning will be easy. But this wasn't about winning. This was about revealing. There is something sacred about truth spoken under oath. It changes people, even those who don't want to change. That night, Marcus came to my house. No knocking. He just walked in and hugged me so tightly. I felt his breath shaking. Mom, I can't believe they're doing this. They're my in-laws. How could they drag you into court? He pulled back, face red. Dad left when I was young. And now they're trying to tear apart. The only real parent I've ever had. I held his face in both hands. Marcus, listen to me. This is not about tearing apart your family. This is about exposing who they really are. He sat at the table, palms covering his eyes. I feel guilty. Like if I hadn't asked you to come to that dinner. I interrupted him. Stop. This is not your fault. You didn't invite cruelty. They brought it with them. He exhaled shakily. Simone is devastated. She doesn't know how to face you anymore. Why? She thinks you'll blame her. I laughed softly. Blame her? Marcus, Simone is the bridge between two worlds. Do you know how hard that is? He looked up. Then what should we do? I placed my hand over his. You stand by your wife. I stand by myself. And truth stands by all of us. He nodded slowly. Mom, will you be okay? I smiled. Do I look like a woman who is afraid of a courtroom? He let out a weak laugh. No, You look like someone the courtroom should be afraid of. The courthouse was colder than I remembered. High ceilings, marble floors, echoes shaped like tension. Dozens of eyes turned as I walked in. Some recognized me as the corporate executive, spoken about in industry magazines. Some whispered. Some stared. The Langfords arrived shortly after, looking fragile and furious. Veronica wore a gray suit. Her hands trembled as she sat. Her eyes avoided mine. Franklin looked stiff, angry, as if swallowing bitterness. Simone followed them, but she sat on the opposite side, beside Marcus. She didn't look at her parents. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. Nathaniel stood. Your Honor, the accusations against my client are not only false, they are reckless, baseless, and stem from bruised pride, rather than any form of wrongdoing. The Langford's attorney rose to respond. He painted me as manipulative, deceitful, strategist, emotionally coercive, socially vindictive. The judge listened carefully. Then, call your first witness. Veronica stood. Her hands shook, but her voice tried to stay level. Eleanor pretended to be poor. She lied to us. She humiliated us publicly. She wanted to destroy our reputation. Nathaniel rose calmly. Mrs. Langford, how much did you know about Miss Hart? Before meeting her? Not much. And yet, he said, walking slowly, you judged her without hesitation, because she appeared simple. That's not true, she snapped. He opened a folder. Is this your message to your daughter? The morning of the dinner? He read aloud. I hope Marcus's mother isn't embarrassing. The courtroom reacted with a ripple of whispers. Veronica froze. Nathaniel continued. You mocked her outfit during dinner. You offered her $600 a month to stay away from her own son. Are these actions of kindness? She stuttered. We were trying to help. Help, Nathaniel repeated. By choosing money over respect? Her lips trembled. I didn't know who she really was. Nathaniel smiled. Exactly. He turned to the judge. And that is the core of this case. They treated her poorly because they believed she had nothing to offer them. When the truth was revealed, they felt humiliated. But humiliation is not the same as manipulation. A hush fell. Veronica sat down slowly, as if the chair itself weighed 1,000 pounds. Franklin was next. His testimony collapsed even faster. When asked why he offered me money, he said, to help her survive. Nathaniel asked, did you ask if she needed help? No. Did you ask what she actually did for work? No. Did you consider she might be comfortable with her life as it was? No. Nathaniel nodded. That's all. One word. A dismissal. Franklin looked crushed. The courtroom quieted. As I stepped forward, I took a deep breath and looked at the judge. My name is Eleanor Hart. I chose a simple life, so my son could grow up valuing humanity instead of wealth. My choice was never deceit. It was parenting. I turned slightly toward Veronica and Franklin. I pretended to be modest, not to manipulate you, but to understand how you treat people you believe are beneath you. Their faces sank. I did not humiliate you. You humiliated yourselves. When you placed money above dignity, silence filled the courtroom like thick fog. I finished softly. Humility is not poverty, and wealth is not character. Then I stepped down. Even the judge's eyes softened. After deliberation, the judge returned. The room tensed. The Langfords held their breath. Marcus grabbed Simone's hand. The judge spoke clearly. The court finds no wrongdoing. By Eleanor Hart. Furthermore, he continued, the petition appears motivated, not by genuine harm, but by bruised pride and social discomfort. Veronica gasped. Franklin looked like someone had punched the air out of him. Petition dismissed, the judge declared, with a formal warning issued to the Langfords against filing baseless claims in the future. A wave of murmurs filled the room. Marcus let out a cry, half laugh, half sob, and hugged Simone tightly. I didn't celebrate. Victory was never my aim. Clarity was, and clarity had arrived, like sunlight breaking through heavy clouds. For 2 days after the dinner disaster, I barely slept, not because of guilt. I had nothing to feel guilty for, but because I could see the weight Marcus carried. For the first time in his life, He had seen me as something more than just mom. He had seen the life I had carefully hidden, the wealth, the power, the influence, the capacity for destruction, and the choice not to use it. He wasn't angry at me. Not at all. He was lost. Every night he called, "Mom, why didn't you tell me?" "Because you didn't need to know. But I could have helped. I could have protected you." I smiled softly through the phone. "Sweetheart, you did protect me. Not with money, not with status, but with the life you gave me. The life of a mother who got to raise a good man." There was silence. Then I heard him wipe his tears. "Mom, I don't deserve you. No one has to deserve love," I whispered. "You only have to honor it." On the third morning, someone knocked on my door. I opened it to find Simone, hands shaking, eyes swollen from crying. "Eleanor, may I come in?" Of course. She stepped inside, glanced at my tiny kitchen, and burst into tears. "I'm so sorry," she said, collapsing into a chair. "My parents, I didn't know they were capable of that. I thought they were tough, maybe judgmental, but I never imagined they'd try to buy you away." I sat beside her. "Simone, your parents are not you." She shook her head. "No, but I let them talk to you that way. I didn't stop them." I touched her hand. "You were in shock, and you were torn between them and your husband." She cried harder. "I was ashamed, not of you, but of what they said about you. And that is unforgivable." "It is human," I whispered, "and humans can grow." She looked up at me, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "Will you help me grow?" Those 5 words slid straight into my heart. "Always." Simone reached into her bag and placed a folder on the table. "What is this?" I asked. "Proof," she said quietly. I opened it. Invoices, receipts, bank statements, transfers under Franklin's name, luxury purchases, overseas jewelry transactions, and finally, a secret account under Veronica's name, with over $3.2 million transferred out of their joint assets. Simone whispered, "I didn't know. I didn't know they were in debt. Every luxury was bought on loans and credit. Everything they flaunted was fake. They spent everything they had to look like the people they wished they were." I closed the folder slowly. "Does Marcus know?" She shook her head. "No. I came to you first because I didn't want him to think I'm part of their lies." I looked her in the eyes. "Simone, this isn't your burden to carry alone." She put both hands over her face. "My parents, they're going to blame you. They're going to say you humiliated them, that you triggered their downfall, when the truth is they destroyed themselves." I exhaled deeply. "Yes, and they will try to drag Marcus down with them." Simone looked up sharply. "You think so?" "Oh, I know so." "Then what do we do?" I closed the folder. "We prepare." "For what?" she whispered. "For the war they are about to start." It happened the very next day. I received a letter, a formal notice from the Langford family attorney. I sat at my small dining table, the morning sunlight falling across the pages. As I read every line calmly, it was a notice of accusation, a claim that I had intentionally humiliated Veronica and Franklin in public. I had defamed their reputation. I had caused emotional distress. I had threatened the stability of their daughter's marriage. I had taken advantage of my financial status to intimidate them. It ended with a warning. If I did not issue a public apology and financial compensation, they would initiate legal action. I didn't laugh. I didn't get angry. I simply folded the paper, placed it back in the envelope, and brewed myself a cup of tea. People often reveal their character when they think they have won, but people reveal their nature when they believe they have been humiliated. And now the Langfords were cornered animals. But the thing they did not know was, I did not fear wolves. I trained them. 3 days later, I received another letter. This time, it was a summons. The Langfords had actually filed the lawsuit. Simone and Marcus arrived at my home that night. Marcus was furious. How dare they? They insulted you. They lied. They tried to bribe you. And now they're suing you. Simone was shaking. This is my fault. They're doing it to punish me. I placed my hands on theirs. Listen to me, both of you. This is not your fault. This is their way of trying to regain control. Marcus stood abruptly. No, Mom. They are not going to drag us through this. I'll talk to them. No, I cut him off firmly. You two will stay out of this. What? Mom. Marcus, I said quietly. There are battles you win by fighting, and battles you win by letting someone else expose themselves. Simone exhaled shakily. What do you mean? I smiled. I've fought in rooms far darker than courtrooms. If they want a legal war, I've won wars with sharper teeth. Marcus looked at me. You already have a plan, don't you? I didn't answer. I simply stood and picked up the folder Simone had brought me. The folder with their financial lies, their secret accounts, their unpaid debts, their hypocrisy documented in ink. The folder that would flip the courtroom upside down. Yes, I said softly. I have a plan. The courtroom was cold, sterile. Quiet in the way a battlefield is quiet before the first gunshot. Veronica sat on the left, perfectly dressed, chin raised, her eyes burning with humiliation. Franklin sat beside her, jaw tight, anger simmering under his skin. Their lawyer, a polished man with an expensive tie, stood confidently as if the case was already won. I sat alone, no attorney beside me. The judge looked at me. Mrs. Hart, are you representing yourself? Yes, Your Honor. A wave of murmurs filled the courtroom. The Langfords smiled. They thought I was foolish, weak, unprepared. Fools always mistake silence for weakness. The judge nodded. Very well. We will proceed. Their attorney stood. Your Honor, our clients were publicly insulted, shamed, humiliated, and manipulated by this woman. A woman who misrepresented her social status. In an attempt to disgrace them, he paced dramatically. She paraded her wealth to demean them. She caused emotional suffering. She humiliated them in a restaurant full of people, leading to social stigma and financial harm. He stopped right in front of my table. In short, Mrs. Hart is a manipulative, malicious woman who used deception for personal amusement. Veronica pretended to wipe a tear. The courtroom murmured sympathetically. The judge nodded. Mrs. Hart, your response? I stood slowly, walked to the center, and placed Simone's folder on the table. Your Honor, I said calmly, before I respond to their accusations, I ask permission to submit evidence. Granted. I opened the folder, and the courtroom gasped. Bank statements, secret accounts, false assets, luxury debts, tax discrepancies, loan defaults, credit rejections. The judge's eyebrows rose. These are the financial documents of the plaintiffs? Yes, Your Honor. Their lawyer scrambled. Objection. This is irrelevant. I looked at him. It is entirely relevant. I turned back to the judge. Your Honor, they accused me of flaunting my wealth to humiliate them. I held up their decline cards, but their humiliation came not from my actions, but from the false image they tried to project. I placed the black card beside them. I did not flaunt wealth. I responded to an offer suggesting I was too poor to belong in their family. I turned to face Veronica and Franklin directly. You wanted me gone because you thought I had nothing. You offered me money to disappear from my son's life. Gasps erupted. Veronica shouted, That's not true. Oh, I said softly. Your Honor, play the recording. I pressed a button on my phone. Their voices filled the courtroom. We can offer you $600 a month. You're holding Marcus back? Your simple life is a burden. Simone covered her face in shame. Marcus clenched his fists. The judge's expression hardened. I continued. I hid my wealth for reasons that belonged to me, but they judged me for what they thought I was, not for who I truly am. I walked back to my table, and now they sue me, because they cannot face the reflection of their own actions. Silence. Thick. Electric. The judge looked at the Langfords. Do you have anything to say? They stammered, hesitated, then said nothing, because there was nothing left to say. The judge leaned forward. Case dismissed. He banged the gavel, and with that sound, their entire world collapsed. When a courtroom empties, it never empties quietly. There are the murmurs, the quick glances, the hurried footsteps of people who witnessed. Something they know they'll whisper about later. But when the Langfords walked out, it was silent. Franklin couldn't lift his head. Veronica could barely breathe. They walked like people carrying invisible stones. Marcus and Simone stood behind me. Mom, Marcus whispered. I've never been so proud of you. But Simone, she was trembling. She wasn't proud. She wasn't relieved. She was broken. She approached me slowly. I'm so sorry, she whispered. They will never forgive me for this. I cupped her face gently. My dear, sometimes losing someone is the only way to find yourself. She sobbed in my arms. Marcus wrapped his arms around us both, and for the first time in many years, I felt like a family was being built, not from blood, but from truth. 3 days after the trial, I received a call from Veronica. Her voice was hoarse, stripped of its pearls and diamonds. Eleanor, I need to speak with you. Alone. For a moment, I considered saying no, but something in her tone, the tiny crack of human vulnerability, made me agree. We met at a quiet lakeside park. The wind was cold, the water dark and trembling. Veronica stood there in an expensive coat, looking like a statue the world had abandoned. She didn't greet me, didn't posture, didn't pretend. She simply whispered, You ruined me. I shook my head gently. No, you ruined yourself. I simply stopped participating in the illusion. She swallowed hard. My daughter won't speak to me. Franklin is furious. The society circles. They're talking, Eleanor. They're calling us pretenders, cheap imitations, financial frauds. I stayed quiet. She took a shaking breath. Do you know what it's like? To spend your life trying to look like you belong? To spend every penny? To maintain an image that people respect? Her voice cracked, because deep down, you know you are nothing without it. For the first time ever, Veronica Langford cried in front of me, tears she had probably suppressed. For 40 years, I didn't comfort her. Not yet. She needed to speak. She needed to release the poison she had swallowed her whole life. My parents were poor, she whispered. They were hardworking, but poor. I swore I would never feel that shame again. Never let my children feel it. I exhaled softly. Veronica, poverty is not shame. Cruelty is. She looked away. And yet I have more of the second than the first. A long silence, the kind that rearranges the soul. Finally, she asked, in a voice stripped of all pride, How did you do it, Eleanor? Live simply, while having everything. I looked out over the lake, because I never let money become my identity. Money is a tool, not a personality. She shook her head slowly. I want to learn, she whispered. I want to change, but I don't know where to start. I turned to her. Start by apologizing. Not to me, to your daughter, to your son-in-law, to yourself. Her lips trembled. Do you think Simone will forgive me? Yes, but she will never trust the old version of you. Only the one you decide to become. Veronica nodded, then whispered, Thank you. Those words probably cost her more than any diamond she owned. The next night, my phone rang again. This time, Franklin. He didn't request to meet. He demanded it. At first I refused, but he insisted. Eleanor, please. Just 10 minutes. I need answers. So we met, in a small tea shop, a place so humble. He looked uncomfortable even sitting there. He clasped his hands. I don't blame you for the lawsuit. It was Veronica's idea. I laughed softly. Oh, I know. You don't have the spine to start a war, but you have just enough ego to fight in one. He flinched, then whispered, I'm scared. It was the first honest thing he had ever said. My business is collapsing. Our debts. We can't hide them anymore. The bank is coming for the house. The cars. Everything. We're on the edge of losing it all. I leaned back calmly. And what do you want from me? He looked ashamed. I don't know. Advice? Help? Something. I cannot save you from consequences. You spend years manufacturing. He looked at the table. I know. But, I added gently, I can tell you this. Marcus does not owe you anything. Simone does not owe you anything. And I owe you nothing. He nodded slowly. But, I continued, you owe them honesty and humility. If you want relationships instead of transactions, start there. Franklin wiped his eyes. I don't know how. You'll learn, I said. Life teaches those who finally admit they don't know everything. The next morning, Simone called me. Eleanor, I'm going to talk to them. Are you sure? Yes, she said softly, but I need your blessing. You have more than that. You have my faith. She paused, then whispered, will you come with me? Not inside. Just drive me there. Of course. When we arrived at her parents' home, she squeezed my hand. Stay here. I'll be back soon. I watched her walk up the long driveway, her posture strong, her heart unshaking, and I realized Simone wasn't breaking. She was transforming. 30 minutes later, she returned. Her face was wet with tears, but her eyes were steady. You okay? I asked. Yes, she whispered. I finally said everything I needed to say, and they finally listened. She exhaled deeply. I told them they could either change or lose me forever. I nodded. And their response? Simone wiped her cheeks. They chose change. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. Small shifts began. Veronica called Simone once a week. Not to gossip, not to control, but to ask, how are you feeling today? Franklin apologized to Marcus. Not elegantly, not perfectly, but sincerely. And sincerity from him was worth more than money ever could be. Slowly, a new family dynamic formed. Not perfect, not healed, but honest. One evening, Marcus and Simone came for dinner. Simone hugged me tightly. You saved us, she whispered. Marcus added, you saved all of us, Mom. But I shook my head. No, you saved yourselves. All I did was stop lying. Simone looked around my tiny living room. You know, she said quietly, your life, this peaceful, simple space, it feels richer than any mansion I ever lived in. I smiled. That's because this home was built on truth, not image. Simone leaned her head on my shoulder, and in that moment, I felt something settle inside me. A peace I had carried alone for decades, finally shared with the people who deserved it. Life is not measured in bank statements, or gold cards, or polished reputations. Life is measured in the people who grow with you, the ones who choose humility over arrogance, truth over image, dignity over display. My wealth never made me powerful. What made me powerful was the choice to never let wealth define me. And now, Marcus knows who I truly am. Simone knows who she truly wants to become. And the Langfords are learning who they should have been all along. Yes, I revealed my identity. Yes, the world saw their truth. Yes, a courtroom shook their empire. But in the end, the greatest victory was the peace that followed. The next morning arrived like a storm waiting on the horizon. I woke before sunrise. I barely slept, but for the first time in years, I felt light. As if the truth I had carried like a stone in my chest had finally been set down. But the war wasn't over, because Franklin and Veronica were not the kind of people who accepted humiliation quietly. And I was not the kind of woman who bowed to intimidation. By mid-morning, a letter arrived at my apartment door. A formal notice, a legal notice. I stared at the envelope, their family crest printed in gold across the top. Simone and Marcus arrived minutes later, breathless, worried. Simone had received the same letter. Mom, Marcus spoke first, eyes wide. They're suing you. My jaw tightened. For what? Simone opened her letter with shaking hands. Defamation, emotional distress, public humiliation, and her voice cracked, attempting to sabotage our marriage. Marcus took the letter from her. This is insane. They're blaming you for their own behavior. I took the paper from him calmly. Lawyers, signatures, stamps, threats. They wanted money, my money. They wanted to scare me. They wanted to teach me a lesson for exposing them. But they didn't know who I truly was. I wasn't just someone who earned $40,000 a month. I was someone who had fought through boardrooms full of wolves long before they knew my face. I looked up at my son and his wife. They think I'm weak, I said quietly. They think I'll fold. Simone swallowed. They're trying to destroy everything. I'm so sorry. This is my fault. I placed a hand gently on her shoulder. No, my dear. This isn't your fault. It's your parents' choice. And now it's time to face them where truth has a voice. 2 weeks later, the courthouse was packed. News had spread. Wealthy business family versus a supposedly poor, manipulative mother. The media circled like vultures. But I walked with my back straight and my heart steady. Marcus walked beside me. Simone walked too, trembling but determined. Inside, Veronica sat like a queen fallen from grace, cold, rigid, and furious. Franklin whispered with his lawyer, rarely meeting anyone's eyes. But when they saw me walk in, their expressions froze, not because of confidence, but because of who walked in behind me. My attorney, Eleanor Briggs, one of the sharpest corporate litigation lawyers in the state. A woman they recognized instantly because they once tried and failed to hire her. Veronica's eyes widened. Franklin flinched. I took my seat calmly. Simone sat behind me, her hand clutched over her mouth, guilt and sorrow twisting through her. The judge entered. The courtroom silenced. The battle began. Their attorney stood first, Robert Halinger, famous, dramatic, and ruthless. He began with a theatrical sigh. Your Honor, my clients have suffered emotional distress due to the defendant's deliberate manipulation and deceit. She posed as a financially destitute woman. I raised an eyebrow. He continued, in order to provoke them, humiliate them, and deliberately create tension in her son's marriage. She orchestrated a public spectacle, causing reputational harm to respected members of our community. Veronica dabbed her eyes with a tissue as if she were a victim. Franklin nodded gravely. They looked like actors on stage. Then their lawyer pointed directly at me. This woman is dangerous. She is not who she pretends to be. The room murmured. Simone's hands clenched. Marcus stood like he wanted to break something. But I remained still, because the truth does not tremble. Eleanor stood slowly. Her voice sliced through the courtroom. Your Honor, manipulation? Deceit? A spectacle. She paused. Let's show the full story. She called the restaurant manager to the stand. A man in a crisp suit stepped forward nervously. Eleanor began, Sir, on the night in question, what did you witness? He swallowed. Mr. and Mrs. Davenport, he nodded toward Veronica and Franklin, were belittling Miss Harris, he motioned to me, calling her unfit, poor, a burden, and suggesting she remove herself from her son's life. Veronica gasped dramatically. That is not true. But the judge silenced her. The manager continued. They also handed her cash in an envelope, telling her she didn't belong at the table. The courtroom erupted with whispers. Simone covered her face, mortified. Marcus leaned forward with rage. Eleanor nodded. Thank you. Then she called the server, a young woman with shaky hands and honest eyes. What did you hear? The server spoke quietly. That woman, she pointed at Veronica, told Miss Harris she looked like she shopped at thrift stores. Said Marcus deserved better. Said money makes a family worthy. Veronica's face turned red. Then Eleanor asked the final question. And who paid the entire restaurant bill that night? The server smiled nervously. Miss Harris did. And the Davenport's cards both declined. The courtroom burst again. Marcus exhaled hard. Simone looked like she might faint. Eleanor stepped back, her voice steady. No further questions. Their lawyer scrambled to regain control. He called Veronica to the stand. She walked with exaggerated grace, head high, as if walking to her throne. Mrs. Davenport, he said softly, did you intend to hurt the defendant? She sighed dramatically. No, I was trying to protect my daughter. We only wanted what's best for Marcus. Eleanor stood instantly. Your Honor, permission to cross. The judge nodded. Eleanor approached her like a lion approaching prey. Mrs. Davenport, do you believe being poor makes someone unworthy? No, Veronica said quickly. Interesting. Eleanor opened a file. Because you told Miss Harris she was embarrassing, beneath your family, and should not be seen with affluent people. Are those not your words? Veronica froze. And you offered her an allowance, Eleanor continued, in exchange for distancing herself from her son. Is that not true? Veronica stuttered. It was misunderstood. Eleanor lifted a brow. No further questions. Franklin refused to take the stand out of stress, which meant he was hiding. Finally, it was my turn. I walked to the stand slowly, the wooden floor echoing beneath my footsteps. Eleanor stood beside me. I placed my hand on the Bible, swore the oath, and sat. The courtroom stilled. Miss Harris, Eleanor said gently, Why did you pretend to be poor? I inhaled. Because wealth reveals character. But poverty reveals truth. My voice echoed through the room. Veronica flinched. Franklin looked away. I wanted to see, I continued, how they would treat me if I had nothing to offer. I am a mother who values humility, kindness, and authenticity. I raised my son with those principles. I needed to know whether his marriage was connected to love or status. Simone's eyes filled with tears. Marcus placed a hand on her back. I spoke on. They insulted me. They judged me. They tried to buy me out of my son's life. Not because of who I was, but who they thought I was. Silence. I held up my black card, the one that paid for everything. I have never flaunted my wealth because I learned long ago. Money can buy comfort, but it cannot buy character. That night, character is what they lacked. I turned toward the judge. I do not countersue. I do not seek revenge. I only seek peace and truth. The judge leaned forward. This case, she began, was not a legal matter. It was a moral one. She looked directly at Veronica and Franklin. You attempted to weaponize the court to mask your own humiliation. There is no legal foundation for your accusations. Your case is dismissed. A final slam of the gavel. Simone sobbed into her hands. Marcus exhaled with relief. Veronica looked like the world had swallowed her whole. As people stood to leave, Simone walked to me slowly, tears streaming. Mom, you saved us, she whispered. I'm so ashamed of them. I'm so sorry. I held her gently. This wasn't about shame, child. It was about truth. And now the truth has set all of us free. Marcus hugged us both. We're starting fresh, he said. No more control from them. No more manipulation. But the story wasn't over. Because endings don't happen in courtrooms. Endings happen in healing. And healing was only beginning. The courthouse steps were crowded, buzzing like a disturbed beehive. Reporters, cameras, people shouting questions. But inside me, everything was strangely silent. A quiet victory. A painful truth unveiled. Marcus held a protective arm around Simone as we walked to the car. She kept her head down, hiding her tears. Mom, Marcus whispered as he opened the car door for me. You didn't just win. You showed everyone who they really are. But I shook my head softly. Truth isn't about winning, son. It's about freeing yourself. Simone stopped before getting in the car. She looked up at me with trembling lips. Can I come home with you tonight? She whispered. I need to talk to you. Alone. Marcus looked at me, uncertain. I nodded. Of course, child. Because healing always begins when someone is brave enough to ask for it. That night, the rain fell softly outside my apartment windows. I made tea, real tea, not the expensive import Simone was raised on. Just simple, warm tea. Simone sat on the couch, her hands wrapped tightly around the mug, though she barely drank. Her eyes were red. Her voice cracked as she whispered. I didn't know they could be so cruel. I sat beside her. You grew up in their world, I said gently. You learned their way of seeing others. Wealth, status, appearances, that was your reality. She shook her head fiercely. But I don't want that anymore. Her voice sounded like a child who had finally awakened from a long nightmare. She took a deep breath. Can I tell you something? Something I never told Marcus? Or anyone? I nodded. Simone's lips trembled. My parents, they controlled everything. Who I spoke to, who I dated, what I studied, what I wore. I wasn't allowed to disagree. If I did, they punished me, not physically, but emotionally. They froze me out, made me feel unworthy. Her shoulders shook. Do you know why I married Marcus? She whispered. Because he was the first man who didn't treat me like a trophy. The first person who ever asked me how I felt. I felt my heart soften for her. I wasn't looking at a spoiled rich girl anymore. I was looking at a wounded soul learning how to breathe. And today, she continued, when I heard everything in court, when I watched you stand there, fearless, I realized, I don't know how to live like that. I don't know how to be strong like you. Her tears spilled over. I want to change. I want to become someone my future children can look up to. Someone Marcus can be proud of. Someone I can be proud of. She looked directly into my eyes. Teach me, please. Teach me how to live with dignity, not wealth. I took her hands in mine. Simone, I said softly, Strength isn't something you're born with. It's something you choose. One decision at a time. She swallowed hard. Then what's the first step? I smiled gently. Humility. She blinked. Humility. Yes, I said. Not humiliation, humility. The ability to look at your life honestly, without pretending. Without hiding behind money or names or status. She nodded slowly, absorbing every word. Second step, I continued, is gratitude. Not for luxury, but for life, for breath, for moments like this. And the third, she whispered. Service, I said. Do something for others without expecting anything back. Help someone who can't repay you. That is where character grows. Simone closed her eyes. I want that, she whispered. I want to start over. Suddenly, her phone buzzed violently on the table. She looked at the screen. Her face drained of color. Mom, she whispered. And then, her father, Franklin. I nodded for her to answer. She hesitated but then picked up. Simone. Franklin's voice snapped through the speaker. Where are you? You left without speaking to us. Simone breathed shakily. Dad, I stayed with Mom, with Marcus's mother, tonight. The line froze. Then Franklin hissed, She is poisoning you against us. Simone's eyes filled with tears. No, Dad. I saw everything with my own eyes. I saw how you treated her, how you spoke to her, how you tried to buy her away. Franklin's voice rose harshly. Everything we did was to protect you. That woman manipulated the situation to make us look bad. Simone cut him off. No, Dad. You made yourselves look bad. Her voice was soft but firm. And for a woman raised in a gilded cage, that was strength. I won't let you control me anymore, she continued. And I won't let you insult the woman who gave me a chance to learn what real integrity is. Franklin sputtered. Simone, listen to me. She didn't. Instead, she whispered, I love you, Dad, but I need space. Real space. Then she hung up. And for the first time, she breathed freely. Simone collapsed against me, crying silently, years of repression pouring out of her. I've never spoken to him like that, she whispered. Never. I feel like my whole life, I was waiting for permission to be myself. I held her as she cried, stroking her hair like a daughter I never had. You don't need permission, I whispered. You only need courage. Simone lifted her head. I want to learn everything you can teach me. How to cook simple meals. How to budget without luxury. How to train my mind to choose kindness first, pride last. Her voice steadied. And I want to face my parents again, but not as the fragile girl they raised, as the woman I'm becoming. I smiled softly. You will. In time. She took a deep breath. And maybe one day you'll forgive me too. For not recognizing your worth sooner. For letting my parents speak to you like that. For not protecting you. I cupped her face gently. Child, you owe me no forgiveness. We all stumble when we're learning to walk differently. Her tears softened. Thank you, she whispered, for giving me a chance my own parents never did. When Marcus arrived later, he found Simone asleep on the couch, her head in my lap, breathing softly, peacefully. He smiled through tired eyes. You two talked? Yes, I whispered. She's learning, healing. Marcus brushed a hand over her hair. You gave her something she never had, he said softly. A mother who sees her. I looked at my son, my sweet, honest son, and I felt something warm inside me. I didn't just gain a daughter-in-law, I murmured. I gained a daughter. He leaned down and kissed my forehead. We're going to be okay, Mom, he whispered. But I wasn't so sure, because storms don't die quietly. And Franklin and Veronica Davenport were storms in human form. They would return. They always did. But this time, they wouldn't be facing the same Simone. And they wouldn't be facing the same me. They would be facing two women reborn. Two women who had learned the true meaning of strength. Two women who had discovered a wealth deeper than any bank account. 3 quiet weeks passed. Weeks of healing. Weeks of rebuilding. Weeks where my home became a safe place for Marcus and Simone. A refuge from wealth, noise, and expectations. We cooked together. We laughed. We cried. We sat on the balcony and watched dawns turn into sunsets. And in those weeks, Simone changed. Her tone softened. Her posture relaxed. Her eyes held something I'd never seen before, clarity. One morning, she stood in my kitchen wearing an apron and stirring lentils, smiling shyly. Look, she whispered, I can cook now. I laughed. Child, you added too much water. She gasped again. But she wasn't embarrassed. She laughed too, genuinely. She was becoming human, untangled, free. Yet beneath the warm growth, we all felt something in the air. A storm gathering. A storm named Veronica Davenport. It happened on a Thursday evening. The sun was sinking orange behind the buildings. Marcus was still at work. Simone and I were preparing simple dinner, spinach and rice, when a knock echoed from the door. A sharp, cold, entitled knock. Simone froze, spoon in hand. I know that knock, she whispered. I gently put my hand on her shoulder. Go to the bedroom, child. No, she said, wiping her hands on her apron. I want to face them now. I'm not hiding anymore. I nodded. She stood beside me as I opened the door. There they were. Veronica Davenport, dressed in white cashmere, her expression stiff with superiority. Franklin Davenport, jaw tight, eyes cold. They stepped inside without waiting to be invited. The arrogance was breathtaking. Veronica scanned the apartment with disgust, as if poverty was contagious. So, she said, voice sharp, this is where our daughter has been hiding. Simone's hands tightened, but she stood tall. This is where I've been healing, she said softly. Veronica's eyes snapped to her. Healing? From what? The influence of this woman. She gestured toward me like I was dirt. Simone inhaled sharply. I stepped forward, calm, steady. Speak respectfully, Veronica. You're in my home. Veronica's lips tightened. She was not accustomed to being challenged. Franklin crossed his arms. We came to talk. As a family. But his tone wasn't family, it was command. Simone frowned. Then speak like family, not dictators. Veronica clicked her tongue. Simone, you have embarrassed us publicly. Your father lost a major contract because of that courtroom circus. Simone blinked. That was your doing, not mine. Do not raise your voice at me, Veronica snapped. I'm not raising my voice, Simone replied quietly. I'm raising my standards. Veronica's jaw dropped slightly. She wasn't prepared for this version of her daughter. Franklin turned to me. And whatever psychological hold you have on our daughter. I stared at him in disbelief. Hold. I repeated. Franklin, I taught her to think for herself. That's the problem, he barked. Simone stepped between us. I am not property, she said. I'm not an investment. I'm not a brand extension. I'm your daughter, and I'm done being controlled. Veronica stepped forward. You left our home. You humiliated us in court. And now you're living here, like some stray cat Marcus picked up. Simone's breath shook, but she didn't break. She stood stronger. No, mother, she whispered. I walked away from abuse. The silence afterward was thunderous. Veronica swallowed hard. Her eyes flickered, not with concern, but fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of public shame. Fear of cracks in their perfect porcelain family image. She softened her voice, as manipulators often do when brute force fails. Sweetheart, come home. Let us fix things. You need us. Simone stared at her mother with heartbreaking clarity. Do I? She whispered. Veronica blinked. Simone continued. When I was 10, I cried because the boy I liked ignored me. You told me to fix my posture and act wealthier. Veronica's eyes darted. When I was 15 and failed a math test, you signed me up for private tutors not because I struggled, but because you didn't want the school to think your daughter was stupid. Simone, when I wanted to study literature, you forced me into business school to maintain the family image. Tears streamed down Simone's cheeks. Every part of me that needed comfort, you replaced with expectations. Veronica's mask cracked for a second. A tiny second. Then Franklin stepped in, voice cold. You've made your point. Come home now. Simone looked at him. No. Franklin blinked. No. No, Dad, Simone repeated, trembling but firm. I'm not coming back to that house. Veronica scoffed. You think you can build a future without our support? You think she can teach you to live better? She pointed directly at me. I remained still. Simone wiped her tears. Yes, she said. She teaches me what you never could. And what is that? Veronica snapped. Simone's answer was simple. Kindness. Franklin stepped forward threateningly. If you walk away from us, he said, you lose everything. Simone inhaled, squared her shoulders, lifted her chin. Then I lose everything, she said quietly, except myself. Veronica was trembling with fury. You ungrateful girl. Do you know what sacrifices we made for you? Simone nodded. And I know the price you expected in return. Your sacrifices were never gifts. They were investments you used to own me. Veronica's hand flew up. For a second, we all thought she would slap her. But she stopped midair, because I took one step forward. Just one. And Veronica froze. My voice was low, but it carried weight. If you ever raise your hand at her again, I said, you will meet a version of me you are not ready for. Franklin placed a hand on Veronica's shoulder immediately. Not out of concern, out of fear. We will speak to our daughter without your interference, he said tightly. This is my home, I replied. And she is safe here. Veronica glared at me with icy hatred. This isn't over, she hissed. I met her gaze calmly. That's where you're wrong, Veronica. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. This is the beginning of your learning. Not mine. Veronica's face twisted in disbelief, because she had never been spoken to like that in her life. Franklin dragged her toward the door. This family isn't finished with you, he warned. They left, slamming the door behind them. The moment they were gone, Simone collapsed to the floor. Not from fear, not from defeat, from release. Years of swallowed words poured out in sobs. Marcus arrived moments later, panicked, and rushed to her. What happened? He exclaimed, kneeling beside her. Simone could barely speak. I told them no, she whispered. I told them I'm not going back. I finally said no. Marcus held her tightly. I'm so proud of you, he whispered into her hair. So proud. I knelt beside them, Simone trembling, Marcus crying silently, and me holding their shoulders. A small family forged not by blood alone, but by truth. And in that tear-soaked moment on the floor, I realized something. The storm wouldn't stop. The Davenports would come harder, louder, more desperate. Their wealth was crumbling, their control slipping. But so what? Because we were rising, together. And the next chapter of this story would change everything, forever. 3 days after the confrontation, a thick white envelope arrived at my door. Addressed to Mrs. Eleanor Ward, my real full name, the one only corporate insiders knew. Simone's hands shook as she held it out to me. They're escalating, she whispered. I opened it calmly. Inside was a neatly typed notice, a legal injunction, filed by Veronica and Franklin Davenport, stating that I had emotionally manipulated Simone, I had interfered with parental rights, I had publicly defamed their family name, and worst of all, they demanded a formal investigation into my corporate status and finances, a threat disguised as legal procedure, a warning shot, a declaration of war. Marcus stormed into the room as Simone finished reading it aloud. They're insane, he growled. They're actually trying to destroy you. I placed the papers on the table. This is not about destroying me, I said quietly. This is about controlling her. Simone's voice cracked. They're trying to punish me by hurting the one person who helped me stand up to them. Her tears spilled again, this time from guilt. I cupped her face gently. No, child, I whispered. This is not your guilt to carry. This is theirs. But Marcus wasn't calm. He slammed his hand on the table. We're filing a counterclaim, he said. We're going after them legally this time. Simone grabbed his arm. No, Marcus, no. If we fight aggressively, it will break everything. Marcus pulled away. They already broke everything. But I interrupted softly. War isn't won by rage, son. It's won by strategy. Simone looked at me through tears. What do we do then? I took a deep breath. We answer their intimidation with truth. The next morning, as I entered my corporate building, heads turned. Whispers followed me. News travels faster in rich circles than wildfire in drought. A junior analyst rushed to my side. Ma'am, is it true the Davenports filed a claim against you? I smiled politely. Rumors travel. Truth walks. It always arrives slower, but stronger. He nodded, stunned by my calmness. But when I reached my floor, my assistant approached nervously. Ma'am, the board wants an emergency meeting. Today. Of course they did. Not because they believed anything the Davenports accused me of, but because power fears exposure. Inside the boardroom, 10 executives sat in polished suits, eyes pinned on me. Eleanor, the chairman began, clearing his throat. Your name is circulating in media whispers. Normally, we ignore gossip, but this involves the Davenport Group, one of the largest investment firms in the country, a group that had recently hit financial trouble and was desperate for leverage. A woman board member leaned forward. Is it true they filed a claim against you? It's true, I replied, maintaining perfect composure. And is there any merit? Another asked cautiously. None, I said plainly. It's retaliation. They are losing control of their daughter, and they need a scapegoat. The room shifted. Someone whispered, sounds like them. The chairman nodded slowly. We know your character, Eleanor. You're one of our strongest executives. But this will become public. Are you prepared for that? I held his gaze. I've been prepared my whole life. Something in my tone hit them. Because the chairman exhaled. Then you have the full support of this board. I walked out with my head high. But I knew the Davenports had just made their biggest mistake. They thought they could intimidate me with money. But they didn't know. I had more of it. Quietly. Strategically. Smartly invested for decades. And unlike them, my wealth wasn't loud. It was dangerous. That night, Simone sat on the couch, legs pulled to her chest. Her eyes were swollen from crying. I didn't think they would ever go this far, she whispered. They didn't think you would ever go this far, I corrected. She buried her face in her knees. Marcus hates them now, and I'm the reason. I sat beside her. No, Simone. They hate that you grew beyond their control. She swallowed painfully. I thought cutting the strings would free me, but it feels like the more I pull away, the tighter they hold on. That is how toxic love works, I said gently. But you are not alone anymore. Simone looked up, her eyes full of fear. What if they ruin your career? I smiled softly. Child, they don't know the battlefield they stepped into. She frowned. What battlefield? Corporate warfare, I said. The arena where I've lived for 30 years. Where I've survived storms more dangerous than Veronica Davenport's ego. Simone wiped her tears. What will they do next? I exhaled. They will try to destroy your marriage. Simone froze. But Marcus and I are strong. Yes, I said. But they won't attack your strength. They'll attack your weaknesses. Her lips trembled. My insecurities. I nodded. They will try to plant doubt. Try to make your husband look like he's betraying you. Try to show you that without them, you have nothing. She clutched her chest. This is psychological warfare. Yes, I said. And they've played it your whole life. You just didn't see it. Simone brushed away a tear. But we're not fighting back? We will, I whispered. When the time is right. 2 days later, Simone received another message. This time from Veronica. A single screenshot. Marcus sitting in a cafe. With a woman. A beautiful woman. The message read, People change, darling. Men like Marcus move on quickly. Simone's heart dropped into her stomach. No, she whispered. I took her phone. One glance was enough. It's staged, I said. But Simone's breathing grew fast and shaky. What if it's not? What if he? Simone, I said firmly, gripping her shoulders. Your mother is manipulating you. She knows your fears. She's weaponizing them. Simone hugged herself tightly. It hurts, she whispered. It hurts because a part of me believed her. I looked into her wounded eyes. That's because she raised you to doubt yourself. Not because there's truth in her words. Simone cried silently. Why are they doing this? Why can't they just let me go? Because, I said softly, you are their last piece of control. Without you, they have nothing left to use. Simone wiped her tears. Then we need to end it, she said suddenly. I looked at her carefully. And what? This, she whispered. All of it. Their power over me. Their influence. Their voice in my life. Her chin trembled. I need to confront them. Face to face. Not as their daughter, but as myself. I nodded. That day is coming. But she didn't know the truth. I was already preparing the battlefield. And when the time came, truth would be the weapon, and dignity would be the victory. 2 days later, something unexpected happened. A corporate contact of mine, a longtime investor, sent me a message. Thought you should know. The Davenports are trying to dig into your financial history. Something big is coming. I froze, not in fear, in realization. This wasn't just a family conflict anymore. This was a full-scale attack. But what they didn't know was that I had one final weapon, one I had never used, one I had kept locked away for years, a secret, a truth, a piece of information that could ruin Veronica and Franklin Davenport in one move. But it was nuclear. Once used, nothing would be the same. I had hoped it would never come to this, but their attack had crossed every line. And now, the last line would be drawn in the courtroom, but not the kind we had already seen. No, this one would expose everything. The rain started again that night, soft at first, then harder, tapping against the windows like impatient fingers. Daniela sat alone in her living room, a warm lamp beside her, casting a circle of golden light around her chair. She was exhausted, not from work, not from the court hearing, but from feeling too much, too deeply for too long. Yet she waited, because Marcus had said, "Mom, I'm coming tonight. I need to talk." She didn't know if he was coming to apologize, or accuse, or collapse into her arms. She only knew he was coming. The doorbell rang. Daniela stood, brushed the creases from her simple cotton dress, and opened the door. Marcus stood there, drenched, shaking, eyes red as though he had been crying all the way from the courthouse. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he whispered, "Mom, can I come in?" Daniela nodded softly, stepping aside. He entered slowly, like a child returning home after a storm. Marcus sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on knees, staring at the floor. Daniela sat across from him, patient, calm, present. Finally, he spoke. "Mom, all these years, you never told me who you really were." Daniela breathed gently. "Because I wanted you to grow up without privilege shaping your character. I didn't want you to become like them." Marcus swallowed, throat tight. "But why didn't you trust me?" It wasn't anger in his voice. It was hurt. Real, deep, raw. Daniela leaned forward. "Marcus, it wasn't you I didn't trust. It was the world around you. Wealth changes people. It changes families. I wanted you to discover your values before you discovered my bank balance." He blinked away tears. "I'm trying to understand, Mom. Really, I am. But you have to understand how shocked I was. I found out my mother, who I thought worked part-time, earns more in a month than many make in a year." Daniela smiled sadly. "And yet I cook the same food, live in the same house, and love you with the same heart." Marcus finally lifted his head, and he saw it. Her honesty, her gentleness, her unwavering love. Something inside him cracked. He got up, walked to her, and sank to his knees at her feet. "Mom, I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry I let them talk to you like that. I'm sorry I didn't protect you. I'm sorry I made you feel alone." Daniela touched his face with trembling fingers. "No, son, you were caught between loyalty and confusion. I never blamed you." He leaned his forehead against her knee, crying quietly. She stroked his hair like when he was a child. For the first time in years, Marcus let himself be a son, and Daniela allowed herself to simply be a mother. Marcus pulled back slightly, eyes still wet. "There's something else, Mom, something I didn't tell you." Daniela's heart tightened. "Tell me." He took a shaky breath. "I was scared," he said softly. "Scared that Simone would leave me. Scared that her parents would turn her against me. Scared that I wasn't enough." Daniela's chest ached. "Oh, my boy. I didn't want to lose my family, Mom. So I tolerated things I shouldn't have. I stayed quiet when they insulted you. I stayed silent when they controlled Simone. I tried to be the good husband, but—" His voice cracked. "I failed you." Daniela shook her head firmly. "No, you failed no one. You were trying to protect everyone at once. Simone, her parents, me, even your pride. That is a heavy burden for a young man." He wiped his face. "But you still lived simply, even though you could have had everything." Daniela smiled. "I did have everything, peace, freedom, and you." A knock interrupted them. Marcus froze. Daniela stood. She opened the door. Simone stood there, her eyes swollen from crying, her coat still dripping from the rain. "May I come in?" she asked softly. Daniela nodded gently. Simone stepped inside, glancing at Marcus, nervous, scared, ashamed. "Marcus, I didn't know you were here." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Of course I'm here. We're fixing this." Simone nodded, trembling. "Good, because I need to fix things too." She looked at Daniela with trembling hands. "I owe you an apology. A real one. I have been blind for too long. I let my parents' values dictate my choices. I let them treat you like you were less." Tears gathered in her eyes. "But you're everything I want to become." Daniela looked at her carefully, not with anger, not with resentment, but with the deep, observing calm of a woman who has lived through storms and survived them. Simone stepped closer. "I've spent my whole life trying to impress my parents, trying to earn their approval, trying to be the daughter they wanted. And in that process, I lost myself." She swallowed hard. "I'm tired of living like a product instead of a person." Marcus reached for her hand. She held it tightly. Then Simone turned to Daniela again. "I want to learn from you. I want to learn how to live with dignity, not appearance. How to love without conditions. How to build a life that isn't ruled by money or fear." Daniela inhaled deeply. "Simone, are you saying this because of what happened today? Or because something has awakened inside you?" Simone wiped a tear. "Because for the first time in my life, I saw truth. Real truth. Your strength didn't come from money. It came from character. And I have none of that yet. But I want it." For a long, heavy moment, Daniela said nothing. She walked slowly toward the fireplace, lit a candle, and returned. Then she placed the candle on the table between the three of them. "Do you see this flame?" she asked softly. They nodded. "Truth is like this flame. You can cover it. You can hide it. You can pretend it isn't there. But if someone tries to blow it out..." She gently shielded the flame with her hand. "It only burns brighter." Simone covered her mouth, choking on a sob. Marcus bowed his head. Daniela continued. "You both have seen truth tonight. You have choices to make now, not because of me, but because of who you want to be." She stood. "Whatever you choose, choose it with honesty." They talked for hours, about fears, about boundaries, about breaking free from toxic influence, about building a marriage based on partnership, not parental approval, about rediscovering love, about starting over, clean, honest, real. And for the first time in their relationship, all three of them were speaking from truth, not masks. By the time the rain stopped, something had shifted. A heavy weight had lifted. Simone stood near the door, preparing to leave with Marcus. Before stepping out, she turned to Daniela. "May I hug you?" Daniela hesitated for a split second. Then she opened her arms. Simone practically collapsed into her, crying into her shoulder. "I'm going to do better," Simone whispered. "I promise." Daniela held her tightly. "I believe you." Marcus hugged both of them. And for the first time, they felt like a real family. Not perfect, not wealthy, not broken, just true. The next morning dawned gray, heavy with tension. The city seemed quieter somehow, as if holding its breath. Simone, Marcus, and I sat at the small kitchen table, finishing a modest breakfast. The air was calm, almost deceptive. Then Marcus's phone buzzed. He frowned, unlocking it. It was a message from Veronica. "You think you can cut us out? Think again. We will be at your doorstep today at noon. Come prepared to explain yourselves." Marcus slammed the phone onto the table. "They're coming here," he said, jaw tight. Simone stood abruptly. "No, we can't let them intimidate us again." I nodded slowly. "We won't. But they are desperate now. And desperate people are dangerous." Simone's eyes widened. "Dangerous? Mom, what do you mean?" "They will try to control you, to turn Marcus against you, to frighten us," I said softly. "This is no longer about wealth. It's about power." Marcus ran a hand through his hair. "We can't let them win." I leaned back, calm. "We're not going to win by fighting fire with fire. We're going to win with truth and strategy." At exactly noon, the sharp knock echoed through the apartment. Veronica and Franklin walked in, expressions carefully neutral, though tension crackled around them like static electricity. Simone stepped forward, standing tall. Marcus flanked her. I remained behind, observing. Veronica's voice was sweet, poisoned with false charm. Simone, Marcus, we just want to talk. Nothing more. Simone's voice was steady. We'll listen, but not at the cost of dignity. Franklin glanced at me. And you're still here meddling. I smiled faintly. I'm here because I care about truth. Something you clearly do not. The air grew colder. Veronica's hands tightened around her designer handbag. You're both making a huge mistake, she hissed. I think you're the ones who've been making mistakes for decades, I said softly. And now you'll see the consequences. Veronica threw her hands up in frustration. We came to help. To protect our daughter. We offered guidance. Simone shook her head. Guidance? Is that what you call insults, manipulation, and threats? Franklin stepped closer, voice low. Dangerous. Simone, you will regret this. You are turning your back on family, on legacy, on everything your parents built for you. I'm turning my back on control, manipulation, and toxicity, Simone replied calmly. And I'm done being afraid of you. I took a step forward. Your daughter is not property, I said. She doesn't belong to you, and your money does not give you moral authority. You see her as an investment. I see her as a human being. Veronica gasped, stunned by the ferocity in my voice. You're overstepping, she hissed. I smiled faintly. No, I'm stepping into truth. Something you've never known. I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick folder. This, I said, laying it on the table, contains every transaction, every investment, every financial detail they thought was hidden. Marcus and Simone stared in surprise. Veronica's eyes widened. What is this? I opened the folder, placing it before her. Evidence of everything you tried to manipulate me with. The assets you assumed I didn't have. The influence you thought I lacked. Franklin reached for it. I held it back. You want control? Here it is. But remember, power without integrity is fragile. I paused, letting my words sink in. The wealth you flaunt, the status you scream about, it is meaningless without character. You cannot buy honesty, dignity, or love. Simone nodded, her hands trembling. And now, I continued, you see that hiding behind money and intimidation doesn't work on those who value truth. Veronica's face flushed with anger, shock, and fear. She began, but I cut her off. You have tried to manipulate, to humiliate, to control. But your influence ends here. Simone is free. Marcus is free. And I am free. Franklin's jaw tightened. This isn't over. I smiled softly. No, it's not. But it will be when you learn humility. Veronica's eyes blazed. She opened her mouth to argue, then froze, realizing nothing would intimidate us anymore. Franklin grabbed her arm. Let's go, he hissed. As they walked toward the door, Veronica turned one last time. You think you've won, she spat. I stepped closer. No, I said quietly, we've only begun to live. The door slammed behind them. Silence fell over the apartment. Simone sank to the floor, exhausted but relieved. Marcus pulled her into his arms. I stood behind them, watching, feeling the tension finally lift. We've survived them before, I said softly, and we will continue to survive them, because the only power they had over us was fear. And fear is gone. Simone lifted her face. Mom, thank you. For everything. I smiled, my heart finally light. You only needed to see truth, child. That is all. That evening we sat together, the city lights glowing outside the windows. No calls, no messages, no threats, just peace. Simone reached over and took my hand. I want to keep learning from you, she whispered. And I will teach you, I said softly. Marcus smiled, wrapping his arms around both of us. This is our family, he said. Built on honesty, built on love, not money, not manipulation. I looked at them, feeling a quiet, unshakable joy. For the first time in years, I felt true wealth, because it wasn't measured in bank statements. It was measured in peace, love, and dignity. It was late evening. The city was cloaked in gold and silver lights, reflecting off rain-slicked streets. Simone had fallen asleep on the couch after a long day of healing and reflection. Marcus was reviewing some paperwork quietly. I sat in my favorite armchair, sipping tea, thinking about how far we'd come. Then the phone rang. It was Veronica. I didn't answer immediately. Marcus froze mid-sentence. "She's not going to stop," he whispered. I set my cup down slowly. "Then it's time she sees the end," I said quietly. I answered the phone. "Yes, Veronica?" My voice was calm, almost cold. There was a pause. Then she spoke, trembling with controlled rage. "Eleanor, you humiliated us. Publicly. You have no idea what you've done. Simone is ours. You won't take her away from us." I smiled softly. "Veronica, listen carefully. You no longer have control. You never did. Simone is free. Marcus is free, and I am free. You can scream, manipulate, or threaten. It changes nothing." She gasped, fury overtaking her. "You think this is over? You think you've won?" I leaned forward. "No, Veronica. I'm showing you the only way to win now is to let go. Release your obsession with control. Release your hatred. And perhaps you might learn humility before it's too late." The line went silent. She hung up. Marcus exhaled. "That was it?" he asked. "Yes," I said. That was the last call they could make. Simone stirred in her sleep, murmuring something about fear and love intertwined. I smiled gently. "They've run out of power," I whispered. The following morning, the Davenports arrived at the corporate headquarters, not to confront me in person, but via a formal legal filing. Their documents were sharp, precise, filled with accusations and threats. But they lacked one thing: truth. I had prepared for this moment for years, silently gathering evidence of their manipulation, deceit, and financial recklessness. The meeting room was tense. Marcus and Simone were present, standing beside me. The opposing lawyers tried to intimidate, using tone and posture to frighten. But I didn't flinch. "Let's begin," I said softly, flipping open my own folder. One by one, I exposed every lie, every threat, every attempt to control. The Davenports had assumed wealth and status could overpower honesty and integrity. They were wrong. Simone watched, eyes wide, as I calmly laid out the truth. Franklin's jaw tightened. Veronica's face drained of color. By the end, even their own lawyers were quiet, realizing the case was indefensible. When the final document was signed, the verdict was clear. The Davenports had no claim, no leverage, no power over Simone or Marcus. And for the first time, their empire of control had collapsed. After the courtroom, Simone stood outside, breathing in the crisp air. Her shoulders were straight. Her eyes sparkled with newfound confidence. She turned to me. "Mom, I can't believe this is real," she whispered. "It is," I said, "because you refused to be small, because you stood for yourself, because you chose truth over fear." Marcus held her hand tightly. "You were incredible," he said. "All of us were, but especially you." Simone smiled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I never thought I could feel this free. Strong. Whole." I hugged her gently. "You've earned it," I said. "And you've earned the right to create a life that is yours alone." Weeks passed. Simone began visiting her parents occasionally, but not as a subordinate or a frightened daughter. She visited as a woman with dignity, values, and strength. Each visit was short, deliberate, filled with calm boundaries. Veronica and Franklin attempted subtle manipulations, but Simone no longer faltered. She spoke calmly, honestly, and clearly. Through her newfound courage, the cycle of control and pretense began to break. Marcus and I watched silently, proud, knowing that the lesson she learned would carry her far beyond our influence. And in this moment, I realized something profound. The greatest power is not in wealth or status, but in the courage to live authentically, in the strength to love without fear, and in the wisdom to break cycles of manipulation. One evening, the three of us sat together in my living room, the city lights glowing softly through the windows. Simone looked at me, her expression full of gratitude. "Mom, I want to keep learning from you," she said softly. "And I will teach you," I replied, "not by what I own, but by what I know. About courage, integrity, and love." Marcus joined us, wrapping his arms around both of us. "This is our family," he said. "Not built on money, not built on fear, built on truth, honesty, and love." I smiled, heart swelling with warmth. For the first time in years, I felt completely at peace. The Davenports no longer mattered. Their attempts to control had failed. Their illusions of superiority were shattered. And the family that truly mattered, Marcus, Simone, and I, was stronger than ever. I poured a cup of tea, raising it slightly in a quiet toast. To truth, I whispered. To freedom, Simone replied, smiling. To love without chains, Marcus added, holding our hands. And in that small, warm living room, under the soft glow of the lamp and the distant city lights, we knew something monumental. We had survived the storm and emerged unbroken, unafraid, and unstoppable. The morning sun filtered softly through sheer curtains. The world outside felt calm, almost as if it had been waiting for this day to arrive. Simone sat at the breakfast table, quietly sipping tea. Marcus poured coffee, careful not to spill a drop. I leaned against the doorway, watching them. For weeks, the air had been thick with tension, anger, and fear. But now there was only quiet strength. Simone looked up, eyes shining. "Mom, it's strange," she said. "I feel alive, free, like I can finally breathe." I smiled. "That's because you are no longer carrying someone else's expectations. You've claimed your life, your voice, and your choices." Marcus nodded, his hand brushing hers. "We're building something real now, something that can't be broken." One afternoon, Simone decided to visit her parents, not to beg or apologize, but to show them what dignity looks like. Veronica and Franklin were stunned when she arrived, not timid, not fearful, but confident and composed. "Mother, father," Simone said calmly, "I've come to speak as your daughter, not the child you wanted to control, but as the woman I've become." Veronica's mouth opened, then closed. She searched for a response, but there was none appropriate. "I've learned something important," Simone continued, "and I hope you can too. Love isn't about control. Respect isn't about money. And family isn't about power. It's about trust, honesty, and support." Franklin shifted in his chair, uncomfortable. Simone took a deep breath. "I forgive you for what you did, but I will not be manipulated again. I will not let fear dictate my life, and I will not allow anyone, no one, to diminish my worth." Silence filled the room. For the first time, Veronica and Franklin truly felt the consequences of their actions. Simone turned toward the door. "I hope one day you understand. But if you don't, I still choose peace. For myself. And for Marcus." She walked out, shoulders straight, radiating strength. Days turned into weeks. Simone embraced a new way of living, simple, honest, and purposeful. She cooked meals, volunteered, and nurtured relationships that weren't bound by money or status. Marcus supported her fully, their partnership deepening as they rebuilt their lives on shared values. I watched them both flourish and felt a profound sense of relief and pride. We hosted small gatherings, laughter echoing through the apartment. Our home became a sanctuary, a place where love, honesty, and integrity thrived. One evening, after dinner, Marcus poured wine. Simone clinked her glass with mine. "To truth," she said. "To courage," Marcus added. "And to family," I whispered. We laughed softly. For the first time, no one was pretending, no one was hiding, no one was afraid. The Davenports were no longer a shadow in our lives. Their control had been shattered, their influence erased. And in its place grew freedom, authenticity, and love. That night, I sat alone by the window, looking at the city lights. The battles, the courtroom, the threats, they all felt like distant storms now. I realized something essential. Wealth is not measured by bank accounts. Power is not measured by dominance. True success is measured by peace, dignity, and love. I closed my eyes and smiled. The weight of decades lifted. I was free. My son was free. Simone was free. We had broken cycles of control and greed, and in doing so had created something stronger than any fortune, a life anchored in truth, resilience, and unconditional love. And as the city slept beneath the stars, I knew, finally, that real wealth is being unafraid to be yourself and loving fiercely without compromise. Simone, Marcus, and I sat on the balcony, the night air cool against our faces. Marcus squeezed my hand. "Thank you for everything, Mom." Simone leaned her head on my shoulder. You taught me how to live, really live. I looked at them both, feeling an unshakable certainty. We didn't just survive, I said softly. We thrived. And the lessons we've learned will shape us and everyone we love for a lifetime. We sat together in silence, letting the night wrap around us. Outside, the world was still noisy, chaotic, and full of challenges. But inside, we were home. And in that home, we discovered the truest, richest form of wealth, peace, authenticity, and love.